Okay, quiz time. What do all these have in common? Ooh, touch for the very first. Don't want a copyright strike. Do you remember when you were in primary school and some kid would come up to you and say to you, "Are you a virgin?" And you'd go, "No." And they'd say, "Ha ha ha, you've had sex, ha." And you were like 9. Yeah, a bit weird, wasn't it, really? Not very realistic, was it? I mean, I've never tried jumping out of a plane on a dinghy, but I wouldn't fancy my chances. This one and this one. And most importantly, this one. So the answer that you've all no doubt worked out is that they all turn 40 in 2024. In fact, the Amstrad CPC 464 turned 40 this month in April. I don't actually know the birthdays of Avril Lavigne and Scarlett Johansson, but they both do turn 40 this year. So it's only taken me 40 years to actually own the longest home computer known to man. I mean, it doesn't just about fits on the screen. Huge. This beauty cost me just under 80 quid from Fleabay, and after reaching out to the seller in case they were interested to see it working, it was lovely to hear that the lady who sold it had fond memories of playing on it with her late father. Being a specky owner as a kid, her and her dad would buy other home computers to tinker with together, and this was one such machine. She had fond memories of taking over the living room TV on Saturdays, 2-bar fire on, playing games, and eventually trying to learn BASIC together with her dad, which was a real interest they could share growing up. Sadly, she couldn't find any of the cables when clearing out her dad's loft, so was unsure if it fully worked, so was thrilled when I showed her that it had gone to a good home. So a big thank you to you, Vicky, and her late father Brian for looking after it. So what am I going to play on my newly acquired CPC? Well, my first port of call was to go to Facebook and go to one of the popular Amstrad groups and ask them what their top 3 games were, in the hope that enough people would come back to me and I'd be able to get a list together of popular games. Sadly, only 15 people replied to me, so thank you for those 15, but it wasn't quite enough. One chap did mention a French Facebook group who had done something similar more recently, but even that didn't have massive numbers for games that people had voted on. So I was back to square one. Then I thought about this. This is Amstrad Action. Running for a formidable 10 years from 1985 to long after the CPC was manufactured in 1995, they gave an award to any game that they thought was top notch, calling it, you ready for this? A master game. Yep. All sounds a little bit shit to me, but master game, we'll go with that. Any games that were pretty good but not quite master game category were known as Action Amstrad Rave games, or they got the Rave Award. Yeah, cool dude. But what I really love about this and this particular magazine is this front cover. It's just so 80s. Check this out. The kid's acting skills sneering at his dad who holds a joystick suspiciously is fantastic. It's such an odd cover and so far away from the Oliver Frey artwork I've seen in rival publications that I love anymore. I do love the fact that the lad's got his Coca-Cola bottle and a Walkman, and then when it's his dad's turn and the kid's all grumpy, there is a pipe and ashtray and a coffee mug. Brilliant. So there were a big bunch of these master games in the 10 years or so that this magazine ran. So I thought looking at the top 10 would be a fun way of seeing what was good about the longest home computer known to man. Now, obviously a few games had the same score, so I've taken the mean average of the sub-scores, sound, playability and whatever they called it, to split these percentages. I'll put all the details of the title in each game. Okay, you get the gist. So let's crack on with number 10. So unsurprisingly, we start with a game ported almost exactly from the Spectrum version, minus some colour clash and probably an all-round better use of colour though, and you'd be forgiven for letting that slide. The Spectrum game is bloody good, so why not port it as it is, as it plays just as well, which is on point here. The small, well-animated characters, the Rex-like graphics and explosions, the fantastic beasts that you have to encounter, and the fairly nifty control system that takes a moment to get used to but works well on the whole, all add up to a brilliant game which has so much variation between the levels. With shooting fireball things to wielding a sword, it really does add up to wanting to return to this little gem again and again. Amstrad Action were really impressed with it in their 55th issue from April 1990.
Myth feels full. It's detailed and challenging, a game constructed by game players for game players. Care is taken at every turn to impress and confuse would-be heroes.
Once I'd gotten over the initial fascination with isometric games, I soon started to hate them in my Spectrum playing days. Head Over Heels was no exception, with double the amount of puzzles to work out and manoeuvre around with stupid directional controls. However, I had never played it on anything else, so I was curious how it fared all these years later on a different system. And yeah, blimey Charlie, I can see how this does well in CPC Best Games list things. I mean, just look at it. It has lots of colour. In fact, I'll go as far as saying it's beautiful. Now, I have no Scooby at what I'm doing. Something about an empire with head and heels being some sort of spies who must escape whatever world they're in and find the crowns of the 5 worlds, yada yada yada. But both characters have different strengths and weaknesses, which makes the puzzles even more tricky to work out than offerings before. Amstrad Action did a nice 2-page colour spread for this one, finally remarking,
"Despite the similarities to Batman, I really can't praise this game highly enough. It's so easy to start playing and you just can't put it down as you discover new features, new rooms and puzzles that you just have to solve. The 300 odd locations will take a lot more exploring and solving than Batman. I defy you not to love this game."
okay, who hasn't played Prince of Persia? Show of hands please. Okay, no one. Good. Who has played Prince of Persia on the CPC? A lot less hands I'm sure, but as 8-bit ports go, this is bloody fantastic and really shows what the line of Amstrad CPC home computers were really capable of. Sure, the rotoscoped animation of the lead character might not be as fluid as its 16-bit counterparts, but who cares? It still looks and plays great with all the elements still intact. The soundtrack is a bit hit and miss, with the opening sequence to the story fairly difficult to follow through the annoying music, but that really is nitpicking on what is an excellent port of an excellent game. The AA guys gushed over it accordingly.
First impressions could lead you to believe you were playing the ST version. Things look so smooth and detailed. The difficulty level has been pitched exactly right, with a little more progress being made each time you play. In short, this is one of the best Amstrad games ever, and it'll be a long time before you come anywhere near rescuing the princess. Wow.
The Commodore game that blew everyone away on the Amiga was ported to the CPC in 1991, and it did not disappoint as a sequel to Turrican. Small playing window aside, this is a fantastic port that moves at great speed and really offers all that you could expect from the CPC. All the power-ups and weapons seem to be here, with plenty of explosions and mayhem going on to really get you invested in exploring this vast game as you make your way to the end level bosses. Nice use of garish colours that set it apart from the C64's more muted approach are a little in your face at times, but it still looks brilliant. Certainly no slowdowns when I was playing, and this has certainly passed the test of time. AA gave it a 2-page colour spread and raved about it.
Turrican 2 literally takes the Amstrad to its limits. It doesn't slow down when there's too much on screen, it uses a very large palette of colours, and everything moves like silk. The similarities to the original Turrican are obvious, but it adds to the theme and improves it greatly. Turrican is a quantum leap in game design on the Amstrad. Rainbow Arts have pulled out all the stops. Used real imagination and made Turrican 2 the single best shoot 'em up on the Amstrad ever.
Stunt Car Racer has always been a game I skipped playing in recent years on the 8-bit platforms because it was trying to do things on those systems that stretched them a little too far. It makes watching the gameplay now look unplayable compared to three-dimensional racing games of today. But for the purposes of this review, here we are, and quite honestly I was pleasantly surprised. Firstly, I really like the head-to-head league system, which gives each race a real purpose. A nice and simple menu system that does exactly what it needs to do is a good start. And then the game. A small window is forgiven, as is the very low frame rate for what the game is trying to achieve. But all of this is actually not at the expense of gameplay. I was happily hurtling along, getting a sense of speed for the slopes, corners and ramps in no time, and bemoaning every crash that would require the slow process of winching me back onto the track. A good mix of tracks keeps the gameplay varied, and the enemy cars are good enough to give you a feel you are in a good race. Sound arguably lets this port down, but what is achieved here cannot be underestimated. AA remarked,
"Technically, the games are stunning to look at as it is fun to play. The graphics are Spartan, but are solid enough to be thoroughly convincing. The tracks are fast, real fast, and always easy to see, if not stay on. The right balance has been struck between reality and playability."
a game that was written for and first released for the CPC is another fan favourite that comes up in many a top 10 list. Influenced by the ultimate isometric affairs and 1984's Marble Madness, it combines the mechanics of the latter with the puzzles similar to Ultimates. Not being a fan of either isometric or marble games leaves me a bit cold personally, but I get why it was so popular. On first play, without reading what the different squares do, I was finding it all a bit too sensitive, but quickly found out that this was a me issue really. Not knowing what the different things do or what the ball spinner shapes offer certainly hindered my experience, but not enough to get a sense of the game and understand why it's still a popular choice. AA really pushed that it was the future of Amstrad gaming. This is an original title that will doubtless undergo conversions to other micros, but they won't get as impressive or as much impact as this is going to. We are undoubtedly seeing the emergence of the Amstrad as the leader in game development rather than just a machine to be converted to. It may take all of 1986 to complete the transition, but there's no doubt it is happening. This is another game that I had experience on the Spectrum, but always felt that it was a bridge too far for my rubber keyed friend. So how does it fare on the CPC? Well, not too bad actually. Yes, it's a little framey with key presses, wait a second, and move, which feels a little slower than the Spectrum possibly. But the better use of colour certainly makes a massive difference to the experience. It's so much clearer to see where you and the objectives are. This certainly confused me as a kid and still confuses me a little today, but I appreciate the scale of the game and what a fantastic achievement the Freescape engine was on the 8-bit micros. I've not played the C64 version, but playability wise this is head and shoulders above the Spectrum one. AA were in awe of the graphical achievement and were equally excited to see what Freescape was going to continue to offer.
It's difficult to fully appreciate a game of this originality and quality just from a review and screenshots. The sequence of screenshots gives an idea of the real environment you can move in. Being able to move under, over, or around it in solid 3D objects is a revelation in itself. When it's combined with good use of colour, wicked puzzles, and a beautifully thought out game, it's a work of genius.
Wow, what an intro to a game. Maybe only bettered by the C64 soundtrack, it's a great start to this arcade conversion. The arcade game is the one I really loved, mainly because of the twin-stick Robotron-esque fun and the ability to co-op with someone else. Take both of those features out and you could be in danger of ruining the game, but this port with those limitations is as solid as they come. Great colourful graphics, which are always present in the better CPC games, are very well done here and put the C64s to shame. It also moves at an incredible pace that takes a little getting used to. I dive straight in as I would have done on the SNES version, but this is more tactical than moving around and spraying. Certain enemies require patience, sitting up in the corners whilst you pick them off once they work out where you are. You will die a lot, but the difficulty level is the right balance that makes you want to have one more go. Another 2-page spread was dedicated to this one in AA.
Ocean Wreck on Smash TV is the easiest game it's released in ages. It's certainly easier to progress than many other games, but there's enough rooms involved to present a long-term challenge for even the most battle-hardened of gamesters. The quality of the graphics and sound and incredible speed and frantic gameplay puts STV in a class of its own, and a variety of different moves and techniques are required for dealing with the different foes. Smash TV is the home computer game the home computer market has been waiting for since 1981. Gnarly.
After Lemmings' release on the 16-bits in 1991 was a huge success, there seemed to be a big push to get the game on every home computer and console imaginable. The CPC got its version around mid-1992 to much excitement in the AA offices. This is a rather tricky one to review, having really played the 16-bit versions of the game to death. It's a challenge not to be dismissive of this 8-bit offering. The little Lemmings are really small and the controls feel a little bit clunky, but it is all here, mostly. A cut down in levels to the bigger boys, there is still plenty of challenge with different difficulty levels to choose from the start. Music is not too bad and not too annoying, and I did have to tell myself to stop playing after I'd progressed through enough levels for footage. I can see why it scored high. By 1992 the 8-bits were suffering, so to get a 16-bit game look this good on the CPC was indeed impressive. Albeit, as AA mentioned, a little bit overpriced.
CPC Lemmings is as stylish and as frighteningly addictive as any other version, though it may be a little overpriced at £16 on tape. Whether it's the best CPC game of all time is a question that can only be settled with extreme violence.
So with a whopping 97% and a mean average of 96.25% amongst the subcategories, Rick Dangerous 2 takes the top spot. And, yeah, okay then. Firstly, it's a platformer which doesn't set my world on fire, but graphically it's okay. A little blocky maybe, but decent nonetheless. Sound is pretty good, and I like that you can choose any of the 4 out of the 5 levels, meaning that if you get stuck or bored, you can try something else, apart from the 5th, which can only be unlocked after completing the other ones. The controls take a bit of getting used to, especially on keyboard. Hold fire and press the up button to shoot your laser gun thing took my brain a little bit of time to comprehend, but on the whole, this is pretty good fun either way. Worthy of top spot? I'm not sure, but Amstrad Action thought so.
Rick Dangerous 2 is a very polished product indeed. A tremendous amount of work has gone into the game design, graphics and sound. In essence, it's a simple platform game, but the way it's presented makes it far, far more than that.
So out of all these games, none of which I'd played before on the CPC incidentally, which one was my favourite? Well, I'm probably going to go Myth, believe it or not. I know it's the most specky ported type game on this list, and I understand any hate towards me on this, but it's a smashing game on here that really plays and looks great on the CPC colour palette. So what do you reckon? Any of these make your CPC top 10? And if not, then what does? Please let me know in the comments. I read all of them and I love getting them, and I'd love to know some more games that I can have a go at on my newly acquired CPC back here. If you like this video, then please give me the thumbs up and subscribe if you want. It really helps me out, really helps the channel out, really helps me grow, and I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.